The contract sitting on the handmade wooden table was thicker than a phone book, and its edges were blindingly white against the scarred dark wood. Tu Na didn't speak. She just stared at the bottom of the final page, her work-worn finger tracing a number so long, so heavy with zeros, that it made the room spin. It was an offer to buy everything. The brand, the factory, the land. Instant, unimaginable generational wealth. For a family that had spent years calculating the cost of every sack of fertilizer and every bowl of rice, this wasn't just money, it was an escape hatch. A guarantee that little Henry would never know the cold grip of an unpaid bill. Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. Today we need to talk about the hardest decision we've ever had to make. Because sometimes the answer to all your prayers comes wrapped in a trap. The morning sun was just beginning to filter through the slats of the bamboo blinds, casting thin golden lines across the kitchen. Outside, the familiar, comforting rhythm of their daily life had already started. The old bamboo gate creaked in the morning breeze. The distant clatter of pots and the soft murmur of neighbors arriving for the morning shift drifted in. But inside the quiet house, the air felt suffocating. Alex stood silently behind Tu Na, his large calloused hand resting heavily on her shoulder. He could feel the tension radiating from her. On the table next to the massive document sat Henry's small, slightly muddy sandals, left carelessly from the day before, and two half-empty cups of green tea that had gone completely cold. Tu Na's finger stopped at the last zero. She let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. This single piece of paper, delivered by a multinational agricultural conglomerate the day before, held the power to erase every sleepless night they had ever shared. No more worrying about rain ruining the harvest. No more anxiety over fluctuating market prices. They could sign their names, pack their bags, and leave the physical exhaustion of this life behind forever. It was the ultimate temptation. But as Alex leaned over, his eyes drifting away from the dizzying buyout number and flipping toward the dense, tightly packed paragraphs at the back of the binder, the illusion of pure salvation began to crack. He stopped at clause 4.2. The corporate buyers loved what they called their authentic farm-to-table story. It made for great marketing. But their actual business model, buried beneath layers of polite legal jargon, was ruthless. The words on the page were cold and sterile. Efficiency optimization, immediate automation transitions, supply chain restructuring to maximize local margin capture. Alex didn't need a law degree to understand what that meant. He slowly stepped away from the table and walked toward the open window overlooking the processing yard. Out there, the air smelled of damp soil and sweet, drying fruit. The yard was alive. He watched Ba Puong gently guiding Henry's small hands, showing the boy how to press a tiny seed into a freshly turned pot of earth. A few yards away, Uncle Ba was wiping the heavy morning sweat from his deeply wrinkled forehead with a faded cotton towel, laughing a deep, booming laugh at a joke one of the local aunties had just made. These were the people who had stood by them when the farm was nothing but dirt and debt. They were the ones who had worked late into the night during the monsoon season, packing boxes by flashlight when the power went out. Alex looked back at the crisp, stark white paper on the table. Efficiency optimization meant replacing the aunties sorting produce by hand with a cold, humming machine. Supply chain restructuring meant cutting the prices paid to the local neighboring farmers until they were starved out of their own fields. The pressure building in Alex's chest had nothing to do with the money anymore. The realization was heavy and sharp. If he and Tu Na signed that line, their family would be safe, rich, and secure for generations. But the cost of that security was the destruction of the very community that had helped them survive. Their personal exit strategy would become everyone else's forced eviction. Tu Na finally looked up from the table, her eyes meeting his across the room. She had read the clause too. The silence between the husband and wife stretched, thick with the weight of an impossible choice. They had built this life to escape the grinding poverty that once choked them. Now the exact thing they prayed for was asking them to become the monsters they used to fear. That night, the house was draped in a heavy, humid stillness. The only sound was the rhythmic clicking of the old oscillating fan in the bedroom, where Henry was fast asleep, his small chest rising and falling in perfect peace. Out on the porch, under the dim, buzzing glow of a single yellow bulb, Alex and Tu Na sat shoulder to shoulder on the wooden bench. The thick white binder sat on Alex's lap. He traced the heavy binding with his thumb, the silence stretching long into the dark. It is easy to be moral when it costs you nothing, but when the price of your principles is your family's absolute bulletproof security, the line between right and wrong becomes painfully blurred. Tu Na leaned her head against Alex's shoulder. She looked exhausted, carrying a deep bone weariness that no single night of sleep could ever fix. They had spent years building this life, stone by stone, crop by crop. They had survived failed harvests. They had survived seasons where the soil yielded nothing but cracked dirt. "Remember the rainy season of our second year?" Tu Na whispered, her voice barely carrying over the chorus of crickets in the garden. "When the river flooded the lower fields." Alex closed his eyes. He didn't just remember it, he felt it in his chest. He remembered the sickening dread of the loan sharks parking their heavy motorbikes by the front gate. He remembered the sharp, metallic taste of fear, the deep shame of counting tarnished coins on the kitchen table just to buy enough rice and eggs to feed Henry for the week, while he and Tu Na quietly pretended they weren't hungry. This contract wasn't just a business deal, it was a shield. If they took the money, Henry would never have to learn the terrible math of survival. He would never have to wear a brave face while his parents panicked behind closed doors. The temptation to be selfish just this once, to take the millions and disappear into a comfortable, quiet life, was overwhelming. But as Alex held his wife in the dark, the weight of the binder on his lap felt less like a shield and more like an anchor dragging them underwater, because to save themselves, they would have to drown everyone else. By 8 o'clock the next morning, the dust of the dirt road kicked up behind a pair of sleek black luxury SUVs. They looked like alien machines parked next to the weathered bamboo fences and the sprawling rows of green crops. 3 men in perfectly tailored suits stepped out. Their polished black leather shoes hesitated for a fraction of a second before stepping onto the uneven, dusty earth of the courtyard. They carried slim, expensive briefcases, their faces arranged in polite, confident smiles. Inside the house, the contrast was almost painful. The men sat around the scarred wooden dining table, their crisp suits stark against the simple, handmade chairs. They didn't notice the history in the wood, the dark burn mark from when Tu Na first learned to roast ginger, or the tiny scratch drawings Henry had carved into the legs with a spoon. To them, this wasn't a home. It was an asset to be liquidated. The lead lawyer, a man with perfectly combed hair and a watch that cost more than a new tractor, clicked open his briefcase. He slid the final page of the contract across the rough wood. With a smooth, practiced motion, he pulled a heavy gold-plated fountain pen from his breast pocket and laid it gently on top of the paper, pointing toward Alex. "Just a signature on the final page, and the wire transfer initiates immediately," the lawyer said softly, his voice slick with certainty. "It's an exit strategy most founders only dream of." An exit strategy. The phrase hung in the air, cold and calculated. Alex looked down at the gold pen. He didn't pick it up. Instead, he looked at Tu Na. She wasn't looking at the money. She wasn't looking at the men in suits. She was looking out the open window. Through the wooden frame, the morning sun illuminated the processing yard. Ba Fuong was kneeling in the dirt, her calloused hands gently guiding Henry's small fingers as they pressed a new seedling into the dark, rich soil. A few feet away, Uncle Ba was carrying a heavy crate of fresh fruit. laughing his deep, echoing laugh with the younger workers, playfully tossing a bruised mango to the farm dog. That was the real company. It wasn't an abstract supply chain or a margin on a spreadsheet. It was blood, sweat, and shared survival. It was a legacy. The lead lawyer cleared his throat, sensing the hesitation but entirely misunderstanding it. If it's the valuation, we can discuss a minor bump. But this is a golden ticket, Alex. Don't let emotion cloud a generational business move. Alex picked up the heavy gold pen. He felt its unnatural weight, cold and perfectly balanced against his calloused fingers. Then, without a word, he set it down on the wooden table, far away from the paper. He placed both hands on the thick white binder and slowly, deliberately, pushed it back across the scarred wood. The heavy thud of the paper sliding away felt like a chain breaking. "We built this on the trust of our neighbors," Alex said, his voice quiet but carrying a firm finality that made the lawyer blink. "If we sell this farm, we sell them. And they are not for sale." The three men stared, their polite smiles hardening into sneers of disbelief. To them, turning down this fortune was sheer foolishness. The human cost of the community was just collateral damage on a balance sheet. To Alex and Tu Na, it was their entire world. Tu Na stood up smoothly. The deep weariness from the night before had vanished, replaced by a quiet, fierce pride. She walked to the heavy wooden front door and pulled it wide open. The bright, warm morning sunlight flooded into the room, washing away the sterile shadows the corporate briefcases had cast, illuminating the tiny scratches Henry had made on the floorboards. "You should pack up," Tu Na said proudly, holding the door open to the breeze. "We are already rich." They stood side by side on the porch and watched the sleek black SUVs turn around, kicking up a settling cloud of dust before finally disappearing down the long dirt road. With every yard those cars drove away, the crushing, unnatural pressure in Alex's chest lifted, replaced by the comforting, ordinary rhythm of their home. They stepped down off the wooden porch and walked out into the sunlit yard. The air smelled sweeter now, of damp earth and blooming jasmine, completely free from the suffocating weight of impossible choices. Henry ran past them, his small muddy sandals slapping happily against the dirt, chasing the farm dog toward the old bamboo gate. Uncle Bar walked over from the sorting tables, wiping his weathered hands on a cotton towel. He didn't ask about the men in the expensive suits. He simply reached into his woven basket and handed Alex and Tu Na a perfectly peeled, bright piece of fresh fruit. They split it in silence, smiling at each other. The sweet, familiar taste grounded them completely. We spend so much of our lives trying to build an exit strategy, hoping to eventually buy our way out of stress. But sometimes the greatest success isn't escaping the life you built. It's realizing that the people around you, the dirt under your fingernails, and the fragile shared peace of an ordinary morning, that is the destination. As Alex wrapped his arm around Tu Na, watching little Henry laugh in the garden, he knew the rainy seasons would still come, and the physical work would still be exhausting. But they would face it together, surrounded by the family they chose. Because a home isn't an asset you cash out, it's something you grow. If you've ever had to choose between what is easy and what is right for your family, please share your story in the comments below. We read every single one, and your experiences inspire us to keep going. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment of our journey here on the farm.